Okay, so this is our next video to deal with fences. We finished off last time at the end of Act 1. This video is going to be focused on Act 2, Scene 1. It's a pivotal scene, and I want to spend the time really unpacking it for you. Then we will have probably one more video that will cover the rest of the play. All right. Remember, we're dealing with fences this week, and we're going to finish up next week. Next week is also holidays. So I'll get back to you. I don't think we'll be having a virtual class. We are having one tomorrow, and this is a reminder. I posted this, but a reminder that our virtual class tomorrow will be at 3:30, not 2. I have a video conference with Tav tomorrow at 2. It should be finished by 3:30, and then I will come in and join and open up the virtual class. So be attentive to that, all right? Because you'll be prompted to join at 2, but I won't be there. All right. So hopefully you're checking your Omnibox messages, or you see this on this video. Fences this week. We wrap it up next week, and then we're moving on to Hamlet. So you should be pretty much finished with fences by now. All right. If not, you want to finish it up this week, and then get started on Hamlet. All right. Remember, Shakespeare, we've already dealt with it, so it's going to be a different kind of challenge. I will be posting tomorrow your questions for your midterm. And you will have 2 weeks from tomorrow to write the essay, right? Remember, it's a 5-paragraph essay that needs to have all the components of an essay, a thesis statement, etc. I'm going to be posting some documents specific to essay writing. Those should be up tonight or tomorrow. And at some point, I'm going to try to put together a video where I'll discuss those documents in detail in terms of the structure and exactly what's expected for the essay. Okay, we'll talk more tomorrow during our class, and if you have questions, that's the time you can bring them up. Of course, you can always contact me through Omnibox as well if you have any questions or concerns. I think that takes care of all the other issues. So let's move on. Again, we're going into Act 2, and we're going to look at it in a fair amount of detail here. You should have read at least this Scene 1 from Act 2. I should have set this up before. There we are. And again, at this stage, you really want to finish the play, because we're going to wrap it up in the next video. We'll probably talk a bit about it tomorrow, but everything now is going to move quickly. After this pivotal scene, things really move quickly, and a lot of things change. But what you're noticing as well, as always, how things are building. Things have built, if you will, to this particular scene. And then what we're going to see after this scene is the fallout. And we'll be looking at what kind of resolution, if there's resolution, that comes as a result of this pivotal moment in the play. So as usual, I'm going to go through it bit by bit. And be attentive to, again, the structure, how things unfold in the scene. And you should be always thinking about how things are unfolding, the sequence of events throughout the play, from scene to scene, act to act. We're looking at character development, what we're learning about character, and the characters as we move forward. This scene here, and I think I mentioned this in the last video, we're going to see Rose really starts to come into her own here. We don't fully recognize it in this scene, but we recognize it from this scene, and then what transpires after this scene as the play moves towards its end. Okay, And we want to look at the changes in the characters and the changes in the character relationships. Always keeping in mind the broader picture of the themes that we've been looking at. And you can go and check those again through the PowerPoint, and how those themes are reflected in the characters, character development, and the interaction between the characters. Father-son themes, again, check the PowerPoint and also check your notes. We've been talking a lot about that. So how do we start here? The Act 2. Now, of course, it's a new act, right? We see how scenes are split up, but now we're into a new act, and that's significant, right? We remember this when we were talking about Shakespeare. We're going to see this again with Hamlet. There are a number of scenes in each act, and each scene is a break of sorts, but then we have a much bigger break when we have different acts. Okay, so we know that there's significance structurally when we come to a new act. Okay, so what do we start off with? We start off with Corey, and it's a quick scene here because it's going to build. It's a setup, right? We're moving towards the climactic moment in this scene. But what do we see Corey doing when we first encounter him? Right? He is at the tree hitting the ball with the bat. So the association hitting the ball with the bat, of course, is baseball. Remember we saw earlier this image, right, of the ball hanging from the tree and a bat by there. We know that Troy uses that to swing the bat, right, for baseball. We see Corey doing this. He's trying to mimic Troy. Okay, so what we're doing here, he's basically trying to, in a sense, fill Troy's shoes. He's still looking at Troy in this father-son relationship as trying to aspire to be like Troy. Right? We see he tries to mimic Troy. But note, his swing is awkward, less sure. Okay, and again, this is demonstrated that he can't be Troy. Right? Again, thinking back to the information we had between when Troy describes his relationship with his father. At some point, the son has to realize he can't or shouldn't perhaps be the father and has to break free and be his own man, if you will. Okay? But at this stage, we see Corey is still tied to Troy. Remember when Corey was trying to make conversation with Troy, about the TV. We can watch World Series together and things like that. Very common, natural behavior of a son towards the father. But of course, we have all these other elements in this father-son relationship. Well, so he's trying to mimic Troy, but he's still, to some degree, defiant. I ain't quitting the team. I don't care what Papa say. Rose always taking care of Corey. Right? I'll talk to him when he gets back. And now we have Gabe. Remember, we talked a fair amount about Gabe. And Gabe is important to this scene, even though he is only there momentarily. And you always want to be thinking, whenever Gabe is mentioned, or whenever he shows up, what's that signify? Remember, Gabe, more than anyone else in this play, is a symbolic figure. Remember, he's always talking about Judgment Day. All right, keep that in mind, right? When you're going to have to answer for your actions in life. All right, and then that's the significance of Gabe here, among other things. All right, so what's happened here is Gabe got arrested for disturbing the peace, right? We see that here. We're gonna have a little more explanation of that as we move along. Corey's in the house. So this is an exchange between Corey and Rose. And then we have Troy and Bono coming back from taking care of the situation with Gabe. And what happened with Gabe, he got arrested for disturbing the peace. Rose asked, Troy's pointing out, he just had to pay $50. And they let him go. We still don't know exactly what happened at this point, but it seems like, the money is all they needed to get him out of jail. Okay, that resonates, but now we're going to move on to other things. For here, all they want is money. And we get here as well that this is not the first time that this has happened, and that Troy's had to come and take care of Gabe. Did Gabe get arrested? Again, we don't want until we get the details, but is it his fault? But we already know that Gabe, has a metal plate in his head and it's not all there. So how responsible is Gabe for his actions? And how much is he dependent on Troy? Right? The Troy-Gabe relationship is a strange one insofar as it's one area where we see Troy expressing a certain level of guilt because he used the money that the government gave Gabe to buy the house. And this all ties into the theme of responsibility, okay? All they care about money. They don't care about what's right. This is Bono speaking. Bono plays a pivotal role here, right? We're going to see this in a moment when he starts pressing Troy about his relationship with Alberta. Here, this is, again, what do we have here? They're building the fence. Got to remember fences, right? So here we have them actually engaging in building the literal fence, right? We're always looking at the symbolism of the fence and the figurative understanding of the fence, but here we have the literal fence. And what's noticeable in this scene, as Bono points out to him, why he's using very hard wood, right? He's using hardwood. Ain't nothing to build a little old fence. Get you some soft pine wood. This is what Bono is telling Troy. And Troy, as usual, I know what I'm doing. This is outside wood. Put pine inside the house. Hardwood is for outside. But Bono persists. You don't need this wood. You don't need the wood to be so hard. Now, what's going on here is this suggestion, what is the relevance of the hardwood versus the softwood? All right, yes, literally, it's about what kind of wood you're going to use to build a fence outside. But at the same time, it's reflecting a bit of, and we see this because it bleeds into the discussion that Bono and Troy are going to have. It's reflecting a bit on Troy, right? Troy is very hard. He's very hard on his family. He's very hard on Corey. Okay, so what we're seeing here is a little play with how the wood and the fence, and the title of the play is Fences, is here being used in a way to give us another example of Troy's character, in that he is hard and insists on the hardness, even when it comes to the fences. Okay. We get a little more here of Troy's his exaggerations or embellishments, his storytelling ability. I might just live forever. Okay. Little things, again, we're looking at all the pieces, right? And they're placed all over the place. What we're doing when we're engaging in this kind of critical reading is we're trying to see where they are and how they all tie in. This little bit here, when they're talking about the pulling of the teeth, and pulling the teeth with pliers, this is what Bono was saying, back in the day. Troy's response here, and again, it's reflecting on themes that we've seen before. Get clean pliers. You understand? Clean pliers, sterilize them. Besides, we ain't living back then. That's the key term here, because we've seen so much where Troy is living back then. This is what makes Troy an intriguing and difficult character in many respects, because on the one hand, he seems obsessed with the back then. And here we're seeing him saying, yeah, we're not living back then, when we see so much of his behavior, he is predicated on his mind being back then in terms of his inability to play in the major leagues because of segregation, etc. Okay. So what we move into here now is we're talking about the Tallahassee gal, Alberta. Okay. So it's Bono who initiates this. We've seen him talk about it before. We've known that Bono's been suspicious, but he presses a little harder here now with Troy. Troy stole I laugh with everyone. Again, as we saw, this is mirroring previous discussions between the two about Alberta. But Bono now is more persistent. That ain't the kind of laughing and joking I'm talking about. He's going to push Troy here, right? And it gets contentious, okay? Corey right, we get here, Corey enters in while this conversation is beginning. And it's an interesting way, again, structurally, they're about to begin a very contentious discussion about Troy having an affair. Another character, in this case, Corey enters from the house, right? Corey enters from the house, and Troy right away says, you know, you got to start helping us build the fence. And he says, he's talking about the hard wood, right? Remember, that's feeding off the other conversation. And he says to Corey, you know, you go start working. Let that young boy show you how it's done, he says to Bono. Right? Now, why this is interesting, I would argue, is this another moment where we're seeing this fluctuation in Troy, because he genuinely seems proud of Corey here. Okay, let that young boy show you how it's done. Corey, you know, there's Bono talking, but it's Troy who initiates it, and of course, Corey's a football player. He's young, and the significance here is that Troy expresses, and we've seen bits of this. Remember with the television, where he says, "Okay, if you put up half the money, I'll match that." We see it even with the football. As much as harsh as Troy's action was in terms of taking Corey off the football team, before he took him off the football team, he said, "Okay, you can play football as long as you meet my conditions." Trying to find a balance here. Okay. So then they get into this discussion here, where Corey initiates it, right? Again, another character structurally coming in who is going to bring in another discussion before they go back to Alberta, but it's an important one because it's about fences now, right? Corey says, "I don't see why Mama want a fence around the yard." And Troy as well, "I don't know either. Why is she insisting that we have this fence?" And here we see the wisdom of Bono. So Bono says, "Some people build fences to keep people out." Okay? And this is what they're assuming it is. Okay? What the hell is she keeping out with it? She ain't got nothing nobody want. Interesting statement. Again, we've seen how Troy talks about and treats Rose all too often. Bono says some people build fences to keep people out, and other people build fences to keep people in. He has to explain to Troy and Corey why Rose wants the fence. Rose wants to hold on to you all. She loves you. Pivotal, key moment here, okay, in understanding what this literal fence is in relation to why Rose wants it. And of course, we're told this right before we see how that fence, the metaphorical fence, in relation to this idea is going to be shattered by Troy's revelation of his affair with Alberta. Corey exits into the house. Troy said, "I said, if I look for, okay, what's want to keep us in when you met Rose?" Okay, so this is, again, unpacking this conversation, leading it back into the main moment and the main purpose of this scene, right? Note how Bono brings the subject up, not in a direct way. It's a very indirect way, which is similar to the way he brought it up before. But again, note how he is persistent. And we ask ourselves, why is Bono pushing on this matter? Is it to, because he cares about Rose, cares about Troy, cares about both? And it really demonstrates some a level of wisdom in Bono too, not just in his recognition that Troy's having the affair, but in how he, in a sense, almost manipulates Troy to acknowledge it. Because remember, Troy's been denying this. And note how he does it through the flattery, and it's not just fake flattery. He's talking about what he reveals to Troy, what Troy has meant to him in their relationship. I done known you seem damn whole life, Rose. I done know both of you for a long time. I remember when you met Rose, when you was hitting them baseball out of the park. Like now he's reminiscing, right? And again, it's very intentional because what I think can be argued here is what Bono wants is he is trying to protect this unit, and he needs for Troy to first acknowledge the affair and then do something, because otherwise he will lose Rose. Okay, he has to make a choice. You picked Rose. I was happy for you. That was the first time I knew you had any sense. I said, my man Troy knows what he's doing. Mainly because remember, they met in prison. But when he sees that Troy could have many other women, when he decided that Rose was the one, this is Bono saying, this is when I realized, yeah, you know what you're doing. I'm going to follow you. I've been following you too. I done learned a whole heap of things about life watching you. I done learned how to tell where lies, how to tell it from the alfalfa. You learned me a lot of things. You showed me how not to make the same mistakes. Okay, important one here, because what do we always see Bono doing after he's with Troy? He always goes back to his wife, right? It's a recurring action in the play. He always goes back to his wife. Okay, again, Bono, without directly confronting him, he keeps pushing on this. She loves you, Troy. Rose loves you. You saying I don't measure up? That's what you're trying to say. I don't measure up because I'm seeing this other gal. I know what you're trying to say. This right now, he's acknowledging it. All right, and this is a big moment because it's almost, in a sense, a kind of confessional moment. Right? It starts with Bono having to elicit this from Troy. But as we see, then Troy is now going to really open up, and he's going to make his confession, his revelation. Bono says, I know what Rose means to you. I'm just trying to say I don't want to see you mess up. Troy says, yeah, I appreciate that, Bono. If you was messing around on Lucille, I'd be telling you the same thing. So it's confrontational, and then it's almost like Troy seems here to be almost thanking him. Well, that's all I got to say. I just say that because I love you both. Troy, hell, you know me. I wasn't out there looking for nothing. Now, you're going to see at this moment with Bono, and then very much when he starts confessing to Rose, he rationalizes. Remember, Troy always needs to be in control, and Troy always needs to have an ability to find, remember how he describes, we can't buy the television because we have to take care of the roof. He's using the same, he's attempting the same kind of logic here. And we have to assess how that's working. I wasn't out there looking for nothing. You can't find a better woman than Rose. And I don't think we ever doubt that he loves Rose. Okay? And then this is why when we see him justifying his actions, I know that, but seems like this woman just stuck onto me where I can't shake her loose. I done wrestled with it. Well, we've seen him wrestling with other things. Tried to throw her off me, but she just stuck on tighter. Now she's stuck on for good. Right? That's kind of a bit of a revelation here, because what we're going to find out is stuck on for good because she's pregnant. And again, Bono, use and control. That's what you tell me all the time. You're responsible for what you do. He's countering this argument, because Troy seems to be acknowledging here, you know, I tried to shake her loose and I couldn't. That's an acknowledgement of a loss of control. Bono's not buying it. Use and control. That's what you tell me all the time. You're responsible for what you do. Don't try to say that it was some kind of other force. You just couldn't shake her loose. You did this consciously. And you need to take responsibility for that. And here's Troy recognizes that, of course, right? I say, I ain't ducking the responsibility of it. As long as it sets right in my heart, then I'm okay. That's all I listen to. It'll tell me right from the wrong every time. I ain't talking about doing Rose no bad turn. I love Rose. She done carried me a long ways, and I love and respect her for that. So he's rationalizing again. He says, I am taking responsibility, okay? But he makes an interesting proclamation here when he says, I always listen to my heart, okay? And, you know, the heart is a very precarious thing. The heart is usually in opposition to the head, right? The heart is emotions, the head is logic. And when Troy is saying, I always listen to my heart heart sets me right, but we know, we've seen him move with his head. Where's his heart in his relationship with Corey? Okay, again, it speaks to this almost schizophrenic nature of Troy. And Bono again is trying to explain to him, you know, what are you going to do when she finds out? Okay, because she's going to find out. You're not going to be able to hide this, right? And this is probably what prompts Troy at this time then to confess to Rose. It's Bono who is bringing this out. Sooner or later, you're going to drop one of them. That's common sense. And Troy, yeah, I hear what you're saying, Bono. I've been trying to figure a way to work it out. So again, we're seeing how this friendship with Bono is probably the only one who could have talked to Troy that way, even though it wasn't harsh, but it was enough to point out things, and it allows Troy to start actually really dealing with this, not just within himself, but now to be able to open up. And that's the role Bono plays here. The wisdom of Bono to be able to extract that from Troy. Remember, and the wisdom of Bono to recognize what the fence is about and what the fence means to Rose, which we just looked at. And Bono says, but work it so it come out right. And here you see Troy saying, you know, talking about Lucille. So the tension starts to break a bit. And they have this little kind of fun bet. I tell you what I'll do. When you finish building this fence for Rose, I'll buy Lucille a refrigerator. They have this little exchange. You know, you got to buy. Mainly, this is a demonstration of how this tension builds between Bono and Troy. And then it laxes. They're good friends, and they seem to be fine here. But we know that this issue of the affair is troublesome to Bono, and we're going to be looking at later on through the play how it ultimately impacts Bono's and Troy's relationship and Bono's respect for Troy, because Troy's engaging. What do we have here when it's an affair? Well, there's lying involved, there's betrayal involved, all these things that are seemingly antithetical to everything that Troy believes in and everything that Bono has admired in Troy. And Bono, I'm going home. I know you don't expect me to help you now. I'm not going to help you now because I'm not going to help you finish the fence. All right, I'm protecting my own my money. I want to see you put that fence up by yourself. That's what I want to see. You'll be here another 6 months without me. I'm not going to help you. And it's good. They leave on a good note. Bono exits, and Rose enters. And she's asking about Gabe, right? And he's explaining that I had to pay together. He was disturbing the peace, say to show cause why he shouldn't be recommitted. So there's a threat that he may be put back into a home for the people in his condition. Rose is asking what Gabe, why are they talking about Gabe at this point? Keep your eye on Gabe, both literally and symbolically, what he comes to represent. And when he shows up and when they're talking about him, it's always important. Some kids was teasing him and he run off home, say he was howling and carrying on. Some folks seen him and called the police. That's all it was. And now as a result of that, they threatened to recommit him. Rose asked, well, what'd you say? What'd you do? I told him I'd look after him. It didn't make no sense to recommit the man. And then he stuck out his palm, and there's the $50 to take him home. Where's he at now? Rose asks. He's gone about his business. He don't need nobody to hold his hand. Well, does he or doesn't he? Kind of needed Troy to get him out of the predicament he was in. And again, from what we saw before, it's not the first time. I don't know, seemed like that would be best place for him if they did put him into a hospital. I know what you're going to say, but that's what I think would be best. So Rose is sitting there saying, you know, one of these days you're not going to be here to bail him out. And he's getting in trouble too much. Troy insists, no, let him be free. He don't bother nobody. It's an interesting, again, relationship that Troy has with Gabe, is the sense of guilt that makes him protective. And even while he's protective of him, he's still, you know, he doesn't need the help and he needs to be free. All these principles that Troy believes in. It does demonstrate, again, this element, this component in Troy where he's capable of caring and seems to really want what's best for Gabe, even though it can be easily argued that that's not what's best for Gabe. Maybe it is best for Gabe to be put in a hospital where he can be looked after. This is, again, the complexity of this character of Troy. So this leads to, after they finish talking about Gabe, got something to tell you. He's hesitant, but now he's made a decision. Yes, Bono helped him make this decision, helped him to come and finally do it. But of course, at the same time, we can't forget that at some point he was going to have to tell Rose and Bono and everyone else, because Alberta's pregnant. Okay, so it's not just, you know, the Bono brings it out of him at this moment. So it comes to this moment that he's going to tell Rose about it. But ultimately, he was going to have to do something. And, you know, he has been thinking about it. And what else can he do? Right? Especially with her pregnant, then yes, it's going to come out. So it's not just him confessing for the sake of confessing, or even just confessing because Bono got it out of him. I think that plays a huge part. But ultimately, he has no choice because she's pregnant. He says, I can't explain it none. I just sort of grows on you till it gets out of it. It starts with a little bush, and the next thing you know, it's a whole forest. Right? Again, speaking in metaphors and symbolism, she doesn't know what he's talking about. I'm talking, woman, let me talk. Now, it's still Troy. I'm trying to find a way to tell you. And how does he reveal this? He doesn't say I'm having an affair. He doesn't say, listen, I've been seeing someone else. He says, I'm going to be a daddy. I'm going to be somebody's daddy. It's an extraordinarily harsh way to bring the subject up, obviously. It's Troy's way. And what he's doing here, and what this tells us, again, we see him with Bono confessing, acknowledging that he's having the affair. Here, what he's acknowledging initially is not the affair, but that through the affair, he's going to be a daddy. So now I have to tell you. It's an important distinction. Again, trying to unpack and remove the layers that is this character of Troy. You're telling me this? Why? I mean, of course, Rose's reaction. You telling me you're going to be somebody's daddy? You telling your wife this? Here's the moment, right? We just started here to here. And then Gabriel comes in, carrying a rose in his hand. It's almost as if Gabriel, in some sense, is looking after Rose. You know, he's showing up at these moments with a rose in his hand. Hey, Troy. Hey, Rose. I mean, it's an awkward moment, obviously. And she's like not even recognizing that Gabriel's there, but we are. Very important that we recognize it. At this moment, Gabriel enters the scene. I have to wait 18 years to hear something like this. And Gabriel, hey, Rose, I got a flower for you. That's a Rose, same Rose like you is. We've seen this before, right? The same kind of thing. Remember, it's Gabriel. And she acknowledges it. And then Gabriel, probably for a variety, because you have to imagine that there's this tension, to say the least, between Troy and Rose at this moment. Troy, you ain't mad at me, is you? Them bad men's come and put me away. You ain't mad at me, is you? Troy, no, I ain't mad. So you see how Gabriel comes into the scene and deflects, right? In a sense, almost giving them a chance to breathe before they're going to go into the next round. Rose is still the 18 years, and Gabriel's now talking about his brand new quarter. They're still, you can imagine the state of mind that Rose is in here. The fellow that gave me this quarter had a whole mess of them. I'm going to keep this quarter till it stops shining. It's an intriguing symbol, and what's its possible relevance here? That it's shiny, that it's quarter, that it's putting things in perspective. Hard to tell. We're going to watch this. We're going to remember this in relation to Gabriel when we see Gabriel and the role he plays further on in the play. Rose tells Gabe to go into the house, get something to eat. Gabriel he reminds Troy, help me, right? Well, you know, I was chasing the hellhounds and then bad men's come and get me and take me away. Troy, help me. He come down there and told them they better let me go before he beat them up. Yeah, he did, which is, of course, that's not probably what happened, but it's a more dramatized version of what happened. What Troy actually did there is he paid $50 to get him out. Gabriel exits to the house. So now they're left alone, and here it comes. As I go through this, what's important to be attentive to is initially watch how Troy tries to justify and rationalize, even to the point where he seems to be expecting Rose to understand and accept it. But Rose doesn't. And this is where we really see an element of Rose that we had hints of before, but where it really comes to the fore. And it's a great demonstration of how blind Troy is to a large extent by his own narcissistic behavior, his own self-absorption. It is a major character flaw in Troy, among many others. But again, I'm always trying to point out to you as well that with these flaws are these other elements of Troy. I mean, these flaws are not new. Rose has been with him for 18 years. She's aware of them. Maybe not this particular one. She obviously has seen something else that we've seen glimpses of in Troy's character. It's important to remember that. Okay, it's very easy to get very, very down on Troy, and we should. But it's those other elements that confuse us in our analysis of his character and the development of his character. And that's really what this play is about. And it's very important to be attentive to how Rose responds, not just in this scene as we're about to see, but then what happens afterwards. Okay? Now Rose is saying it don't make any sense. Yeah, I could have expected this 10 or 15 years ago, but not now. We've been together long enough. I understand you were wild back then, but not now. Troy's and said, age ain't got nothing to do with it. This is, you know, he's got a point there. It's also his ego, I would imagine, exerting itself here. Now Rose is now letting it out, right? I done tried to be everything a wife should be. Been married 18 years. I got to live to see the day you tell me you've been seeing another woman and done father and child by her. I ain't never wanted no half nothing in my family. My whole family is half. Everybody got different fathers and mothers, my two sisters, my brother. Can't hardly tell who's who, right? And we see this in Troy's family as well. He's two sons, two different mothers, and so on. Can't never sit down and talk about it's your papa and your mama and my. What this is demonstrating to us is goes back to the fence. Comes back to what Bona was explaining about why she wants the fence. She wants a complete family. The fence is to keep her family in. And it needs to, and this is where we can see another idea involving the hard wood. It needs to be really hard if it's going to keep this family together. This is what Rose desires, is the family. It's all about the family to her. He's trying to get her to stop. I never wanted that for none of my children, and now you want to drag your behind in here and tell me something like this, because this is obviously extraordinarily disruptive to the family. And we're going to see how it affects the family unit as the play progresses. Troy says, I can't just make it go away. It's done now, right? This comes back to the fact, I mean, he's been having the affair for quite a while. But what's done now is the circumstances are that she's pregnant. There's going to be a child. I can't wish the circumstance of this thing away. But of course, before she got pregnant, he was still carrying on. And he kept that from Rose. He kept that from Bono. He kept that from everyone. He's going to explain why. Rose, again, this whole dialogue is very important to see Rose's development. And we learn so much about Rose, and we realize how strong Rose actually is and how committed Rose is to many things. Okay? 18 years of my life invested in you. You ought to have stayed upstairs in my bed where you belong. Or remember, she's also, this is this visceral reaction to the news initially, but it starts getting deeper as she continues to talk. All of a sudden, it's we, right? Troy says, Roy, now listen to me. We can get a handle on this thing. We can talk it out, come to an understanding. And she's like, all of a sudden, it's we? Where was we at when you was down there rolling around with some godforsaken woman? We should have come to an understanding before you started making a damn fool of yourself. You're a day late and $1 short when it comes to an understanding with me. Now, we've seen how Troy has, referred to Rose as a dog, and, in many respects, maybe half jokingly or not, it's not treated Rose that well, and Rose is taking it. Here we see, not anymore, and here we see her fighting back, and in a very pragmatic and logical way to a large extent. Troy says, it's just she gives me, and watch here how Troy tries to justify and rationalize his affair. She gives me a different idea, a different understanding about myself. I can step out of this house and get away from the pressures and problems, be a different man. I ain't got to wonder how I'm going to pay the bills or get the roof fixed. I can just be a part of myself that I ain't never been. About the worst thing you could say in a moment like this, I would suggest. What I want to know is, do you plan to continue seeing her? That's all you can say. Now, here's Rose saying, okay, what are you going to do about it? He's just described that, I have no pressure. She makes me feel good. I.e., I don't feel good when I'm with you. I feel good when I'm with her. I mean, it's extraordinarily harsh. And he's saying it to her as if, they're having a conversation about something that would be, hardly as personal as this is. Are you going to continue seeing her? And he goes on. I can sit up in her house and laugh. Do you understand what I'm saying? I can laugh out loud, and it feels good. It reaches all the way down to the bottom of my shoes. And he pauses. And he says, Rose, I can't give that up. So not only is he telling her that he's been having an affair, not only is he telling Rose that the woman he's been having the affair with is now pregnant, he's also telling Rose, I'm going to continue to see her. There seems to be no remorse. He's unable at this moment to be thinking of anyone but himself. He doesn't seem to acknowledge how devastated Rose must be, how hurt. And they've been together 18 years. Is he intentionally trying to hurt Rose here? We don't get that sense. What we're getting is a sense of he's so self-absorbed that he can't even seem to recognize the impact he's having, because he's genuinely trying to justify this. Rose says, maybe you ought to go and stay down there with her. Is she a better woman than me? No, he says, it ain't about nobody being a better woman or nothing. Rose, you ain't the blame. A man couldn't ask for no woman to be a better wife than you've been. I'm responsible for it. I done locked myself into a pattern trying to take care of you all that I forgot about myself. There's irony here. Okay, you understand what he's saying here? He's saying, oh, I'll take responsibility for this. The problem was that I was so busy taking care of all of you that I wasn't taking care of myself. Again, watch Rose's reaction. What the hell was I there for? Okay. I mean, again, it's such an awkward scene because it's not what, you know, in a sense, it's not what we expect Troy to be doing here. They should be asking for forgiveness, or they were trying to work. No, he's saying, well, listen, I'm going to continue to see her. And I take responsibility. The reason that this happened is because I was too busy taking care of all of you. Not taking care of myself. And yet we've seen so much of him just thinking about himself. Rose, what the hell was I here for? Okay. And then Troy says, Rose, I done tried all my life to live decent, to live a clean, hard, useful life. We need to ask ourselves from what we've seen, is that true? Because again, it's not clear cut. Sometimes we see him being so selfish. Other times we see these other elements of him, this sense of responsibility and duty that we know is putting restrictions on his freedom. His responsibility and duty towards his family means that there is a fence that doesn't allow him to do whatever he wants. Because when you commit to a family and children and all this, you are putting restrictions. You are putting some kind of a fence around yourself. But that's normal. Okay, and that's why we have to see that in the context of how he's trying to justify it. I lived a clean, hard, useful life. He is a hardworking man. I tried to be a good husband to you in every way I knew how. Okay, limitations. Maybe I come into the world backwards. I don't know, but you born with two strikes. Now watch how he drifts here into his baseball metaphors. Maybe, but you born with two strikes on you before you come to the plate. You got to guard it closely. Always looking for the curveball on the inside corner. You can't afford to let none get past you. You can't afford a call strike. If you're going to go down, you're going to go down swinging. Everything lined up against you, what you're going to do. I fooled them, Rose. I bunted when I found you and Corey. Halfway decent job. I was safe. Nothing touch me. I wasn't going to strike out no more. I wasn't going to go back to the penitentiary. I wasn't going to lay in the streets with a bottle of wine. I was safe. I had me a family, a job. I wasn't going to get that last strike. I was on first, looking for one of them boys to knock me in to get me home. Yes, he had all those things. I had me a family, a job, doing the right thing, found a way around it, came from a hard life, 2 strikes on him, right from the start. But then he risked it all. Seemingly might have thrown it all away. Is this strike 3 for Troy? Rose responds, you should have stayed in my bed, Troy. Then when I saw that gal, she firmed up my backbone, and I got to thinking that if I tried, I just might be able to steal second. Do you understand? After 18 years, I wanted to steal second. Now, again, this is the baseball metaphors. And I know for some of you, baseball is not a big thing. But, you know, even if you're not familiar with baseball, and stealing bases is a part of the game, it's still stealing. He tried to steal second. So, yes, in a baseball context, it's part of the game. But it's still something that you're trying to get away with. And I think that is very telling here. I met this gal, and she gave me the courage to try to steal second, try to get more. Thought I'd go on for it. After 18 years, I thought, well, God damn it, I'm going to go on for it. She's still saying, you should have held me tight. You should have grabbed me and held on. Rose goes on, we're not talking about baseball. Here's where she really takes him to task on his continued baseball metaphors. Remember, baseball's also a game. This isn't a game, right? What's going on here? We're not talking about baseball. We're talking about you going off to lay in bed with another woman and then bring it home to me. That's what we're talking about. We ain't talking about no baseball. But Troy insists, Rose, you're not listening to me. I'm trying the best I can to explain it to you. It's not easy for me to admit that I've been standing in the same place for 18 years. It's not easy for me to have this conversation, to acknowledge that I've been felt trapped behind fences, if you will, in the same place for 18 years. Again, where are his thoughts and concerns for what Rose must be experiencing here? Can't get past that. Now that the floodgates have been opened with his confession, he's letting it all hang out. He's trying to justify. He's trying to take control of the situation. Right? We've always looked at Troy and his insistence on having control. And here comes Rose, and this is really just a great moment where she really calls him out in many respects. Remember, he says here, I've been standing in the same place for 18 years. Like, this has just been terrible. What did you expect me to do? I had to steal second. I had to get out of this. Really. I've been standing with you. I've been right here with you, Troy. I got a life too. I gave 18 years of my life to stand in the same spot with you. Right? Here we're seeing this Rose. And it catches us a bit off guard because we've seen her as being very, not timid, but always taking it. Well, she lets him have it. She lets him have it with truth and logic and everything that is believable. Something maybe, you know, they should have had this conversation years ago, or maybe Rose should have said things years ago, but there was no need to. Now she's saying, okay, listen to me, buddy. Stop with your narcissistic, self-absorbed understanding of the situation. You've been standing in the same spot. I've been here with you. Don't you think I ever wanted other things? Don't you think I had dreams and hopes? What about my life? What about me? Don't you think it ever crossed my mind to want to know another man that I wanted to lay up somewhere and forget? About my responsibilities? That I wanted someone to make me laugh so I could feel good? You're not the only one who's got wants and needs. But I held on to you, Troy. I took all my feelings, my wants and needs, my dreams, and I buried them inside you. I planted, okay, what's her name? Her name is Rose. I planted a seed and watched and prayed over it. I planted myself inside you and waited to bloom. And it didn't take me no 18 years to find out the soil was hard and rocky. But I wasn't never going to bloom. And it was never going to bloom. I'm never going to have all those other things because I have responsibilities as a wife. And sure, I had temptations and wanted these other things, but I didn't do it. I held on to you, Troy. I held you tighter. You was my husband. I owed you everything I had, every part of me I could find and give you. I wanted to be there with you because you's my husband. And that was the only way I was going to survive as your wife. You always talking about what you give and what you don't have to give, but you take too. You take, and you don't even know nobody's given. It's an extraordinary speech. I mean, she really lets them have it. You think you're the only one? You think you're the only one with responsibilities and duties? The only one who's made sacrifices? The only one who doesn't have aspirations, to have more in life? I do too. But I stuck with my responsibilities. And I tried to make the best of what we have. I planted myself into you and into this family. Don't talk to me about how, you're stuck in one place and therefore you had a justification to go out and have an affair, to engage in an act of betrayal, to engage in lies. Rose turns to exit into the house. Troy grabs her arm. You say I take and don't give? You're hurting me. You say I take and don't give? You couldn't say anything worse to Troy, because Troy is absolutely under the belief that he's given everything, that he doesn't take, right? He has this image of himself as being the one to do his duty, to take care of his family, doing all the work. That's why he treats his family in the way that he does. Because they're not, I'm doing everything for you. I'm making all the sacrifices for you, Rose, and for you, Corey. Never acknowledging that they're making sacrifices for him. Seemingly never acknowledging it. You're hurting my arm. Like, oh, Troy, I don't give you everything I got. Don't you tell that lie on me. Troy genuinely believes he gives everything he's got. Troy looks at this relationship, this family relationship, as he's doing everything. And this is one of his great flaws, is his inability to empathize, to recognize what others are doing in dealing with him, because he's so self-absorbed. Does that make him a bad man? That's one of the key questions that we have to be asking ourselves, especially as we move on to the rest of the play. It's easy to say, yes, he's a bad man. It's easy to really dislike him. But if it was as simple as that, we wouldn't really have much of a drama here. Right? Keep that in mind as you finish or when you reflect on what you've read, if you've already finished the play. He insists, don't tell that lie on me. You couldn't say anything worse to him, because he believes he is giving everything, and that's why he justifies that I had to go and find some kind of release. And you should be able to understand that, Rose. She says, I don't understand that. Well, you think I haven't had to make sacrifices, etc. While this, and it's getting violent here, notice, he's grabbing her. Again, you're hurting me. He keeps going on, don't tell me about no taking and giving. You cut him to the quick with that, because it's exposing him. It's exposing him. It's exposing his entire understanding of himself. That's what Rose does here. And who would know better than Rose? Corey comes up behind Troy and grabs him. Troy, surprised, is thrown off balance, just as Corey throws a glancing blow and catches him on the chest and knocks him down. He actually knocks Troy down, and Troy is stunned, as is Corey. Remember, Okay, keep in mind, this is mirroring Troy's encounter to some degree, right, with his father. Remember when he relates the story he had with his father, when he confronted his father over the incident over the 13-year-old girl, attacked his father, and his father's response was to beat Troy senseless and unconscious. So here we have now Troy's the father in this scenario, and Corey, his son, is attacking him. So it seems to be all set up for Troy to turn around and be just like his father. Rose, Troy, no. Troy gets to his feet and starts at Corey. Rose is pleading, no, don't. Yes, we're also going to say he is going to destroy Corey. Rose pulls on Troy to hold him back. Troy stops himself. It's not completely like his father. He manages to stop himself. All right, he says to Corey. That's strike two. Remember, he already gave him a strike one in the previous scene. You stay away from around me, boy. Don't you strike out. You live in with a full count. Don't you strike out. Troy exit out the yard as the lights go down. Okay, you understand how pivotal this scene in this moment is, and you know, if you've read ahead, or if you finished the play, you know, if you have a chance, I would suggest strongly you read it again from this moment on, and to get a better sense, remind of the details of what happens, but also when you're reading it or when you're reflecting upon it, how are we meant to feel about Troy? How is Rose? Remember, and we're going to talk about this in the next video when we try to wrap this up. Be attentive to Rose and how what Rose's relationship like Troy is after this. What Corey's relationship with Troy is like after this. What Bono's relationship with Troy is after this. And what Troy's relationship with himself is like after this. He's a complex individual. And that's what makes the play so rich in so many ways. And Rose is an extraordinary character in terms of how she is adhering to all the principles that Troy has talked about, but she seems at this moment to adhere to them much better than he does, and he doesn't seem to be able to recognize that. A big thing about, as we get towards the end, and the idea of Judgment Day, salvation requires self-awareness. What we see in this scene, among other things, is Troy doesn't seem to understand. He's so fixated on his way of seeing things, his lack of empathy for Rose, his inability to understand what this may be doing to her, his inability to have recognized that she's making sacrifices as well. Are we going to see Troy then start to make these observations and recognitions? Okay, remember we have our virtual class tomorrow at 3:30, and look for tomorrow. I will discuss with you in the virtual class your midterm. Go over it with you. I'll be posting this tonight, so hopefully you have a chance to maybe look at it before our class tomorrow. I will be posting probably tonight or tomorrow, as I said, material on essay writing, very specific stuff that is necessary to construct the proper kind of essay that I'm looking for. And we'll take it from there. Try, as we wrap up this, be anticipating Hamlet it's Shakespeare again. The earlier you start reading it, the better. We have plenty of time. There's 5 acts. We're going to have 6 weeks to go through it, and we'll discuss how we're going to navigate through the Hamlet at the end of next week or something along those lines. In any case, everyone stay safe, and I'll be looking for you at 3:30 tomorrow.